Over to you, Christina.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Christina Udine, and I'm an innovation analyst here at the Center for Aging and Brain Health Innovation. For those of you not so familiar with CABHI, we're a solution accelerator in the aging and brain health sector, providing funding and support to innovators for the development, testing, and dissemination of new ideas and technologies that address unmet needs in the brain health and senior care sector. We were established in 2015 and are the result of the largest investment in brain health and aging in Canadian history. We represent a unique collaboration of healthcare, science, industry, not-for-profit, and government partners whose aim is to help improve the quality of life for the world's aging population, allowing older adults to age safely in the setting of their choice while maintaining their cognitive, emotional, and physical well-being. So today we're here to present our Tech Watch series, which we're launching today, which is an educational series on new technologies in the senior care sector. We're excited to present Lori Orlov, an expert analyst in this industry. So today, Lori will go through her presentation, and we'll have an opportunity for a question and answer period towards the end of the presentation. So please do submit your questions while you're listening to the webinar, and we will address them at the end. And now I'll pass it on to Lori to start us off. Welcome, Lori.
Thank you so much. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Sounds good. Okay. Just one point is that I believe a PDF of the slides can be made available to attendees after this presentation. And so I just wanted people to know that they could have that, and I'll make sure that I send it appropriately. So I'm going to just start a little bit about myself and my background. There may be some folks on this webinar who are not familiar with what I do. I'm an industry analyst in the technology for older adults segment. I have been blogging about this segment since 2009, and I'm a business analyst, and I track that market. Prior to that, I was an industry analyst at Forrester Research about trends in the e-commerce and IT area, and before that, I spent many years in IT. So one of the things that over the years that one continues to note and, in fact, be frustrated with is the user interface, despite the fact that there are a lot of user interface experts out there. The user interface for older adults to interact with technology has, in fact, for the most part, deteriorated, especially with the introduction of smartphones, which are very small in comparison to large screen PCs or Macs. And the result of user interface flaws and a variety of other barriers have really put a situation out there which is not good. Older adults have struggled to use technology, and efforts to mitigate their struggles have not been super successful. Also, those who serve older adults, which would include assisted living and independent living and home care and home health care and transportation services, all want to serve older adults, all want to have user interfaces that older adults could use, and so far it's not been really great. In fact, one of them that's kind of interesting, a transportation service was launched in the past couple of years called GoGo Grandparent, and the reason it was launched was because older adults were not comfortable using the Uber app. And I think that's just a small indicator of the barrier and issue. And it appears that older adults could be hostile to technology, but I think the flip side is really the case, which is innovators have been indifferent to creating user interfaces that are appropriate. Now, if you could go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. So, beginning in 2009, I began segmenting the market of technology for older adults into categories. And in this picture of it, the caregiver potentially could be the connector for the older adult in the use of technologies, which could include, as you see in the top left, consumer communication and engagement technologies like email and chat and games, etc. And then technologies on the right, which are the safety-related technologies, which are of great value to older adults, and including all the way to fall detection, which is being reinvented again, and home and activity monitoring, inactivity as well, and that's also being reinvented again. There are new companies emerging in these spaces. The bottom left is the learning and contribution category, which is how older adults can in fact stay engaged, both socially, learning new things. We know that learning new things is how we keep our brains active. Financial wellness and volunteering are all part of this learning and contribution segment. And even as I speak, there are new technology categories. For example, fintech is a category which has been invented to help preserve financial wellness of the older adult population. And we know, of course, there are now many online mechanisms for older adults to participate and learn new skills, and we want to see that leveraged. The bottom right are the health and wellness technologies, and that includes the mobile health applications that are on phones, but it also includes telehealth, which is sometimes referred to as digital health, and maybe referred to as e-health, and maybe m-health. There's a lot of healths. But all of these categories together are really about, the telehealth category is about remotely being able to help serve the health needs of the population. And medication management, which could be dispensing units, boxes, but could also be reminders to take your pills. And even one company a couple years ago introduced something that took pictures of all your pills and showed you what they looked like. I don't think that has really taken off, but also includes disease management, fitness trackers, and the whole world of wearables, which I believe we'll be talking about in a future session. So what this tells us, and when we see this market, is there an opportunity to improve the user interface? And in fact, this category of voice-first technologies creates a new user interface, and in fact, it even has an acronym. You know, there's a graphical user interface, the GUI. Well, this interface is the voice user interface. It's the VUI. And in the case of the VUI, there are developers out there, software developers out there, who are creating software for the voice category first. And that's how it ended up being called the voice first technology category. And just, you know, the Amazon Echo is simply an instantiation of this. It is not the only product in the market, and it will not be the only product in the market. We're talking about a very new market, at most about 2 years old. Our old user interfaces had these inscrutable little sign-ins, tiny screen buttons, that demanded great precision, and that was just to get to step one. So if you had any form of tremor in your hand or had difficulty positioning, never mind having to pinch and zoom in order to see, you would get frustrated. In fact, all of us, I'm sure at one point or another, have become quite frustrated with our smartphones due to their size, due to their sensitivity of the screen, and a variety of really barriers created by the industry that has made the devices. So in a voice-initiated world, we now have new possibilities, which could include access to music, to books, to communication with family, both audibly through the sound of them, but also even visually. Health technology is definitely moving into the picture of voice-first technology. There are companies that have entered the market, and it's an exciting set of innovations. I would argue that this is probably one of the most exciting changes in interface that we've had, really probably for the past 5-6 years. When you have a brand new interface style or a VUI as a means of interaction, you know that the various companies that make products may not yet have caught up with what has changed in terms of hardware, and therefore what may need to change in terms of software. So it's exciting, but we're not there yet. So let's go to the next slide. I like to show this slide, and frankly, the reason for it has not changed in the time I've been doing this presentation, is that really the whole point of having technologies, I just described how voice-first technology could in fact connect categories of technology, but also that technology itself can connect categories of people. The seniors, the providers of care to seniors, and the family and non-professional caregivers. And what we really want to see is all the lines for those triangles connected to solid lines. We need to remember that today 46% of women age 75 plus live alone. That the life expectancy of women at 65 is 88.8. For men, it's 86.6. And in fact, financial planners, I read an announcement on this recently from one group online that said people now have to plan to live to 95 if you're planning your financial investments. Well, if you think about that, that is an interesting challenge to the environment of our society, never mind the user interface of how we interact with the technology part of that environment. And today we also know from surveys that technology ownership is correlated with income, with marital status, with education levels, and with training. And while 33% of the 75 plus may have smartphones, non-use is much more of an indicator of the lack of positive experience, and it's not clear that not having a smartphone has to do with money. We know that studies have shown, for example, that low-income younger people will sacrifice quite a bit to pay for their smartphone, and so I don't think this is a money problem. I think it's much more about the interface. And then, followed by that, it could be a money problem. So let's go to the next slide. So what is voice first, and why does it matter? Well, the simple definition of it is that seniors, and all of us, can speak to their devices and hear a response. And that is the remarkable breakthrough, I guess, speak to your device and hear a response. But you've been able to do that for a few years through Siri. So what's really different now? Well, as you can see a little further down, I'll talk about this, but it's quite likely that your devices will be able to speak to you first. So today we have 9 million, at least, devices, including the Amazon Echo and the Google Home device, but it has been predicted, and I believe this will be revised upwards shortly, that there will be 30 million devices by year end, by the end of 2017. And that by 2018, organizations like Gartner have predicted that 30% of interactions with technology will be through conversations. That it'll become the primary mode in some settings. And one of those settings you can already see now, if you were going out to buy a new car, it's already been established as a primary interaction in new cars that you can plug in your iPhone or your Android phone with Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, and so whatever music you might have loaded onto your phone, you can hear through your car speakers. You can interact with your car, if you will, for turn-by-turn directions by speaking your requirement. That is a breakthrough. That's a positive breakthrough. There's a lot of negative issues with cars. Screens have gotten a bit big, and hopefully the drivers are not looking at them. But others are saying that the device like the Amazon Echo is a fit for seniors with dementia. And that is a possibility. It could be an interface that you could certainly, at some stages of dementia, you could ask a question, you could get an answer, and you could ask the same question repeatedly. Hopefully you've been understood. Hopefully what you said is easier to communicate than what you might have typed or swiped. So that is the hope where we are in terms of the use with dementia. There is experimentation going on. Certainly in the senior living world, there's quite a bit of experimentation going on. And we'll see how that fits into environments that are designed for people with dementia and whether it would work in the home for someone who has dementia. Certainly early stage, I think we're in general agreement that it's possible. So if you go to the next slide. So let's look a little bit more at what you can do. It instantly answers questions like, what day is it? What time is it? It's a machine and it never gets bored. So you can interact with Siri in the Apple ecosystem, with Alexa in the Amazon ecosystem, with Cortana in the Microsoft ecosystem, OK Google in the Google ecosystem, and now we have an attempt on the part of Samsung to introduce another, some people will call these virtual assistants, in the form of Bixby. So those are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 ecosystems that are all trying to get a handle on how a virtual assistant or a voice first approach to technology could be useful and thus extended. And one of the great things about many of these capabilities is they are being modified and upgraded on the internet. So you don't have to necessarily download a new version if there is high-speed internet access to them. That's a positive. So if we'll answer questions like what day is it, what time is it, and never get annoyed and frustrated, that could be very helpful for early onset dementia. You can play music and read audiobooks and read someone the news, helping people who have mobility issues so they don't need to get up and move or change something, that they could just speak a command. We've been talking about speaking commands to technology for a long time. Maybe we've finally reached the stage where that has been realized. It will tell fun jokes and riddles, and in fact, it remembers that you already asked it for a joke and will tell you a different joke. It will look up information about anything. So, is it snowing today? What's playing on TV tonight? Are the Red Sox playing? It will report traffic, weather. But it can also be used, and this is where we're probably heading with these things, is they can be used to turn on the lights, change the temperature, or customize the interaction to an individual. And that will be the real breakthrough when we're able to customize the interaction to an individual. So if you could move on to the next slide, please. So if you take a look at this picture, many of you have probably seen some of these devices. The top left is the Amazon Echo, and it's just not possible to keep up with all the variants that Amazon has launched in the past week and a half. So this slide has just got a few of them. And then you see the next one over is the iPad and the Apple Watch, which have the same operating system and therefore both enable you to speak your question or your requirement. If you go down a layer, you're looking at Google Home, which is really in the same category as the Amazon Echo. The idea of this is that you can speak to something that you can also integrate your home environment with. Not necessarily saying that's a good thing right now, but the potential is to get a little bit closer to what is often referred to as the smart home. In the middle is an interesting variation of the Amazon Echo, and that's called the Echo Show. And for those who've in fact opted in or given permissions to participate in an interaction with this device, it can be placed on a kitchen counter, and you can have not just the person interacting from a sound perspective, but also an image of them. Is this a breakthrough? Is this a bad idea? Does it replace the idea of a tablet on a kitchen table? We don't know yet how successful this is going to be. It was a rather abrupt introduction into the market, and Amazon does not break out its product successes one way or the other, so we don't know how this one has done. If you look to the right, there is the Amazon Echo interface piece of hardware. It looks like it must be related to the Amazon Echo, but it is not. It's Lenovo Health, and it's really got a lot of software that actually can be used in multiple interface styles, one of which is voice first, for providing access to your health information and possibly even guidance on how to care for yourself in certain post-discharge, for example, circumstances. On the bottom left, you're looking at the Alexa calling interface, which is a rather remarkable introduction of an offering that is intended to use this product, the hardware, for free calling, free telephone calling. I don't know if that's going to take off, but that has certainly been a change in the market. And then in the middle at the bottom is Marvi, which is the way you wake it up is Ask Marvi. And what you can do with Marvi is it's a set of Alexa skills. So the skills are the means by which technology companies configure an interaction that's appropriate to the subject matter. So in the case of Marby, it's intended to be for the adult children or people who are care recipients, and the script of Alexa skills is very specific to a caregiving circumstance. And then you go over to the right, and you're looking there at a technology that was announced, and then the company was acquired, pulled off the market, and it will reemerge in 2018. It's called LifePod, and at the moment, it has the patents to be the only one of these devices that has a two-way interface. So that means you can issue a wake-up word to wake it up, or it could wake itself up. So the idea of waking itself up can be very useful in senior living settings. It can be very useful in healthcare situations. Really, it's 5 o'clock, have you eaten today, as opposed to you saying wake up word to one of these devices and then asking a question of what time is dinner. Have you eaten today? What time is dinner? These are very different circumstances, and so we have some great potential in this product. It is not yet in the market. So if you go to the next slide, please. So what is a concern? There is actually a number of concerns associated with this market, and this is what happens with any new market. And here are some that were as of May 2017. At this point, I don't see a big advantage to updating with more concerns. This is plenty of concerns, and they have not been fully addressed yet. So one of the issues is the cost of broadband, which can be as much as $75 a month. Without broadband or high-speed internet access, this isn't necessarily going to work particularly well. The cost of data. Some carriers are charging for how much data you use in an interaction. That could be an issue. The implementation complexity is a problem. We're really talking about app configuration at the moment through alternate devices, potentially like smartphones. That's fine, but that doesn't make it plug and play. And so that is an issue. It may be that we are moving to a stage where it just pops into the wall. You already have high-speed internet. It sniffs around and says it knows what's going on here. You've opted in. Somebody's opted in on your behalf. And there you go. It's able to be deployed. There's a news story that I just posted. Actually, it was dated in June from Front Porch, which is in Seattle, that is deploying the Amazon Echo and Alexa with people in their mid-80s and older in the Front Porch senior living environments. That's interesting, and that sounds like a great idea, but all the heavy lifting in that implementation is most likely being done by staff of Front Porch. So I keep an open mind on that. At some point, this stuff will all plug in and will be off and running. The other thing is the issue of language support, and this is examples of language support. Kind of interesting, really. The Echo is U.S. English, UK English, and German. It could be in the next few months that slide will be obsolete. Google Home initially launched in English only. Apple Siri, for some reason, has many languages, including French. But the real question will be is what's the ability to understand accents? And it could be not just English-based accents, but language-based accents and dialects. We're going to guess that at this time, the ability to do that is somewhat limited. So then the question comes, how are you going to get access to all of this fabulous content and that could potentially be used by an older adult if they could wake things up by speaking? Well, there you go. There's Amazon Prime Music, Amazon Music Unlimited, Spotify Premium, Pandora, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, and Audible. These are just examples of sources. But the problem with every one of these sources is you need to spend money to get them. You need to spend a fair amount to become Amazon Prime, and a number of these are subscription. And the other thing to understand here is what was the motive of the company that created the technology in the first place? What was Amazon's motive? Well, Amazon is in the business of selling stuff. And what you have to be careful of is that you don't find yourself or a person who's using it accidentally buying stuff. And so how you configure is very important here. But that may also turn out to be true of, there's a rather famous story about the buying a dollhouse online where a child actually ordered a dollhouse without their parents' knowledge. And the other, of course, exciting thing we have ahead of us is these devices potentially talking to each other or listening to the television. The problem with always listening, always on devices is they may be, in fact, hearing dialogue that is not coming from you. If you place them next to TV sets, it's possible that they hear wake-up words in the TV, and they wake up. And that potentially is not an ideal circumstance. So there's going to be lots more content. There's going to be quite a bit of evolution. I've been practicing asking lots of questions of this technology, both technology, the Google-based one and the Echo, and we also have an iPhone in the house and can ask that lots of questions too. And I would say if we're not at version 1, but we're probably at version 1.5 of the ability to have enough understanding, which is typically derived through these artificial intelligence assembly of you're speaking to some database that is being updated all the time with more questions, more answers, more mistakes, and thus it's getting smarter and smarter. I think we have a ways to go. So we're at 1.5 in the evolution of this technology, which makes it very, very exciting for the older adult population within the next few years because the pace of change is accelerating. So if you'd go to the next slide. So I want to thank you for allowing me to present this material today. I'm looking forward to a possibility that I think is confirmed that I will do a research report over the next 3 months that will be called The Future of Voice-First Technology and Older Adults. I believe that has been sponsored, and that is going to enable me to look more into the possibilities, particularly in the older adult market segment. And I believe that when you start talking about the future of the use of these technologies, the potential is, I think it's really greater than the potential for benefit from smartphones and maybe even from tablets. I think we've gone about as far as we can go with really attractive screens that one can interact with or pound on with your finger. I just feel like we need to get to the next stage, which is that's enough of that. Perhaps combine that with a voice-first interface, and we could really see a big leap in capability for older adults. So that's the extent of what I wanted to say today. I'm hopeful that we will open up to questions that are being moderated either by David or Christina. If you want to enable your microphones, and if you have any questions, or invite people to type them. I don't know that I can see that. Can I see that? No.
Thank you, Lori. So much rich information, really great stuff to learn. So we do open up the floor to questions if anyone has any.
Great.
Yeah. I guess you did such a great job. You answered everyone's questions throughout the yes. Oh, we do have one.
I have a quick question. Lori, first of all, thank you. You talked a little bit about the Alexa calling feature. So
yep.
The Amazon Echo technically isn't available in Canada. Any luck getting the voice calling feature to work in Canada?
I don't know whether the voice calling feature will be enabled in Canada, but you know, one of the important things is to make sure you find the right carrier who has an interest in integrating with that, and that would probably be the best way to move it forward is through a carrier, and the second best way is through Amazon. Actually, I would say that's a distant best way. I'd like to see what carriers are thinking about in the context of this, telecom carriers.
Okay.
All right, thank you, Lori. Yes, and Simon, another question.
Go ahead.
So, Lori, in terms of helping seniors age in place, which is one of our CABHI's themes or motives, is that is there any particular app that voice technology will give access to that you think will be particularly key? Is it transportation? That's the one I keep thinking of. And is there any sort of medical application of voice first technologies, like specifically medical, that you've come across that you think is notable?
Well, I mentioned one company, Orbita, that is attempting to provide a voice-first interface, but I think there's a whole ton of experimentation. I think I posted another press release this morning of another company that is doing something. Let's see. Voice-powered in-home care platform wins Amazon Alexa diabetes competition. It's a press release on my website. I don't know, after you look at it, you say, well, I think we can make more progress than this, but it's worth taking a look at. But, helping people manage chronic conditions is, and even better, waking oneself up as a device to help people manage chronic conditions is probably the most useful, but it's possible that in the discharge process from hospitals that there will be an app, an interface, or something that will be associated with it. As long as the person does not have dementia, there's no issue with providing a customized set of skills that are about particular chronic diseases, particular discharge circumstances. I can imagine wound care, for example. One of the things people, when they leave a hospital, they don't necessarily grasp immediately all of the instructions they've been given. Many of those instructions are in paper form. They can be confusing. They could have dosage confusion and all kinds of stuff like that. So this is where I think Voice First is going to make a leap over the other interface styles, assuming that what you're being told, it could, if it's generic, that's great. Okay, so you've just been released with a particular type of circumstance, and here are the generic instructions, which in the past might have been captured in video and available to you. Look at it in a video. In this case, you could actually ask about them. You know, you've gotten home, you're sitting there with your medication stack and your bandages or whatever it happens to be, and there you are. Let's ask a question. Let's speak it, and Alexa, what is the standard care for wounds post-appendectomy? So it could be that answer starts to hop into a lexicon. We know that Amazon is going to be, if they're not already, extremely interested. Well, that thing I just told you about, that press release about voice-powered in-home care platform wins Amazon Alexa diabetes competition. That competition obviously was sponsored by Amazon. So they're looking. They want to find healthcare-related uses, and I think it's just a matter of time before they get more sophisticated than the one that's in that particular example.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Sorry, I just wanted to add to that discussion. So I know we talked about the use of the Amazon Echo in healthcare, so I just want to add to the aspect of using the Amazon Echo just to improve quality of life in general. So we've been using the Amazon Echo with a few of our clients in their homes to get a sense of independence. We've been using it with clients that are low-functioning quadriplegic. These are clients that are not able to use their computer, access cell phones, other means of technology. And this voice-first technology, such as the Amazon Echo, is giving them access to a realm of technologies that they otherwise wouldn't have had access to. So they can turn on their TV, control the channel, go on Netflix, turn on the lights, open doors, call their nurses that are on other floors, all through the Amazon Echo. So I think it's been a huge improvement in not only quality of life, but also giving them a sense of independence.
Well, the other interesting thing here is that we have one whole market segment called smart home.
Yeah.
We have another sort of intersecting market segment called voice first. And we have another sub-segment, maybe of smart home, that's the Internet of Things. And then we've got smartphones and tablets and what have you. So one of the things that I think is ahead of us, and that will be a great thing, is when people start to see the intersection of these capabilities to improve quality of life, to help people who may have mobility issues, to engage people with other people. That's what the Echo Show is an interesting example of. That, however, new technologies, as they emerge, they deal with the issues of data loss, identity theft, and all this other thing. So this is part of the reason why we're at a relatively early stage. Maybe this will be better at dealing with managing your personal identity and your information if you opt in, for example. Maybe this will be better than our other mechanisms, which have certainly become open to threats and attacks. And we also apparently are, in general, as a society, are not prone to upgrading our devices. And therefore, to the degree technology moves over to the internet side as opposed to specifically upgrading our device, that's progress too, and particularly good progress to help improve quality of life without having people to constantly upgrading device X or device Y.
Great, thank you. All right, thank you, Lori. I think we've covered everything, and we'll end off here today. Thank you for everyone who joined us. Our next Tech Watch is going to be on November 14th, and Lori will be presenting on mobility services for seniors, so some cool service providers for transportation options. And so we hope you'll join us then. In the coming weeks, we'll release registration for that webinar, and we'll go from there. So thank you again, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. And we'll have Tech Talk again soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.